I've heard a lot of people having sex on the cup.
All right, welcome to Friday's edition of Ducks Morning Brew. Another Ducks win to follow up to end the week here. A 2-1 shootout victory over the Columbus Blue Jackets. The Ducks pick up wins in arguably the two games that were or should have been classified as must-wins this week. The 2-0 win against the Sabres and a 2-1 win against the Blue Jackets. As bad as the Blue Jackets should be or are on paper, they are a tough team to play at home. They were a 9-3-0 record at home heading into last night's game. So for the Ducks to get 2 points off of them and put a damper on that record a little bit is really good for them. They've picked up 5 of 6 points from this road trip with the shootout loss coming against the Capitals. So it's been a really successful road trip so far with 2 games upcoming, Pittsburgh on Saturday and St. Louis on Sunday, which we'll be having a watch party for. So we'll get into that game a little bit and look at some of the positives and negatives coming out of last night's game. Steven put out a great poll on our Twitter, looking at how the Ducks' pleasant surprise to the season, how that could affect what Jeff Solomon and the Ducks organization does come the trade deadline and the offseason. Due to their success, does that change the plan? Will that change how they handle certain players? So we'll get a little bit dive into that a little bit. And then I also want to look at Isac Lundestrom. He scored the only goal for the Ducks last night. A great individual effort where he catches the puck and puts himself on a breakaway and makes a nice move on Merzlikins to get the Ducks into the game. But he's just become a really good even strength weapon for the Ducks this year, quietly going about his business while being deployed in a heavily defensive role for the Ducks. So I want to give him a little bit of love and look into that one first. But let's start off with the game review. All right, so looking at last night's game, as we said, a largely uneventful affair. Similar to the Buffalo game. That Buffalo game was really not that exciting, bar the Trevor Zegras, Sonny Milano goal of the season effort in that one. And this game was, kind of the same thing. And honestly, if you're playing on the road, that's kind of how you want to play. You want to play a game that's going to make it tough for your opposition to score. The Ducks only allow 1 goal in their last 2 games, and for 2 tough games on the road against teams you should beat, to go in and play that way, and a way that they really haven't shown they can play this year is win these close, tight 1-goal games without it being like a 6-5 game. So it was nice to see them be able to do that. I thought the Blue Jackets did play a really good game. It was relatively even throughout, especially when you look at the underlying numbers, expected goals, Corsi for percentage, scoring chances for, high danger chances for. They're all either even or slightly tipped in the Blue Jackets' favor. And I felt that's kind of how the game went for most of the night is, the Blue Jackets had control, but they didn't have a stranglehold on the Ducks. It was back and forth with the Blue Jackets kind of pacing the play slightly for most of the game. And I think the Ducks did a good job of keeping themselves in it. I thought John Gibson had an excellent game, and it was a really good goalie duel between him and Elvis Merzlikins. Gibby made a few key saves to keep the Ducks in it. And then obviously there was that Werenski goal that ended up getting called back for offside, which was a great spot by the Ducks video coaches to end up getting that one challenged and called back. But a very, very good road game against a young team that's really good in their home barn. And I thought Zegras, Milano, and Raquel, despite not getting on the board, were again the Ducks' best line when it came to offensive chances and getting close to giving the Ducks the win in regulation. And that's what you want right now. I mean, this is really the only line the Ducks can roll out and have confidence in offensively, with Getzlaf on the IR and now Adam Henrique being added to the IR. So nice to see them have a good game, but for another player like Isac Lundestrom and his line to step up in this game and get the Ducks' only goal in regulation is good to see as well, because it's there's going to be games like this where Zegras, Milano, and Raquel play really well, and it just doesn't come together for whatever reason. Goaltender is having a good night. Defensively, the other team just kind of shuts them down a little bit, or they just don't get enough quality chances to put the puck in the back of the net. So it is going to happen, but I thought this was a good game. Columbus isn't Buffalo. I think they're a little bit better of a team than that, but it is a game the Ducks the way they've been playing this year, should go in and win. And I thought they did a really good job of coming out with 2 points in this one. A little bit of bad blood at the end in the shootout too, and Trevor Zegras right at the forefront of that. He scored his shootout goal, a nice move, and cheered a little bit too close to the Blue Jackets bench, which Jakob Voracek was not happy with. So when he scored, he had something to say to the Ducks bench, and then obviously Rickard Rakell ended up ending it and winning it in the shootout. But a little bit of nastiness at the end. Good thing is these teams don't play each other. I mean, it's a bad thing, I guess. They don't play each other until April, so we won't really see a sequel to this to this fracas after the whistle and after the game here. But a fun game. I like the Blue Jackets. They're a good young team, and I think the Ducks acquitted themselves pretty well. All right, I want to get over to the poll because I think this is what we're going to spend the majority of today's episode on. Steven put out a really insightful poll on our social media, basically looking at how the Ducks have had such a pleasant surprise and start to the season so far. And he wanted to get everybody's opinion on, are we worried that the organization will overreact to this season's success and make short-sighted moves at the deadline and in the offseason? So the 3 options we had to vote on were no, Solomon gets what's up and he's going to stick to the rebuild, as he said in his interview when he took over from Bob Murray. Yes, the Ducks will pull a Canucks-type overreaction and start adding a bunch of veterans and selling some of the younger players. Or no, because this team is legit and he'll make some additions to help this team, and they are a legit playoff team. So the majority of you, 62%, said no, Solomon won't overreact. He gets what's up. I tend to agree with that. There is some worry there, of course, because we have some PTSD from Bob Murray back in the day where he didn't want to fully commit to the rebuild, and the Ducks made some questionable moves, or really not any moves, to sell off players they should. You look at Adam Henrique and Silverberg were signed to new contracts instead of dealt when they probably should have been. It's not like it's affecting the Ducks negatively at the moment. Those contracts aren't really an issue because the Ducks are well below the cap ceiling, but those are assets that you could have got for those guys. Young players could be making their way into the roster right now, but of course we wouldn't be having the season we are. So it is what it is. It's easy to look back on that and criticize it, but we're looking at the present here, and we're looking at guys like Rakell and Manson and Lindholm, who are pending unrestricted free agents. And with the Ducks play this year, do we think Solomon is going to change his mind on what he would have done or what he thought they would have done heading into the season where the Ducks were expected to be one of the worst teams in the league? I don't think so. I think, Steven and I and Jason discussed this on the last weekly show, so if you want to get a real kind of in-depth discussion on this, make sure to check that out. But I don't think they will, and I don't think it's a hard sell to the team either. They're playing well, and you want to reward them for playing well, but I think it's an easy explanation to say, listen, these guys, their contracts are up at the end of the year. We are continuing to do what has made us successful to this point and bring in young players and promote young players from within our system. And bringing guys like Rakell and Manson back goes against the grain of what we're trying to do here. And I think it's an easy business explanation for the players. I can understand that. I think you can still add in those trades where you are still helping the team out a bit. You're not just completely selling off. So, we talked about Rakell and potentially getting Jake DeBrusk back from the Boston Bruins in a deal that ships out Rakell, so you get a younger player, but one who can still immediately help you right now and still be competitive this year if the Ducks want to try and get into one of the last few playoff spots. So I think Jeff Solomon understands where the Ducks are. I think they're happy with the success this year, but I don't think it's necessarily going to affect the decisions that they make at the trade deadline. I think Rickard Rakell and Josh Manson are likely still going to be moved. I think Hampus Lindholm's a different one because he's still young enough and tracks to be good enough in his early 30s that he can be a key piece to this team. I don't think the Ducks have a ton of depth behind him right now that are ready to go. You've obviously got Fowler and you've got Thrawn and Zellweger and guys on the way, but they're not quite here yet. And I think keeping a guy like Hampus Lindholm could be beneficial. So that's the only one I could see maybe that the way the Ducks have played this year, that it could affect that decision with them being a little bit better and closer to competing than they thought they would, that bringing Hampus Lindholm back seems like a more likely option than it would have if the Ducks were bad this year. But we'll see. I'm really interested to see what Jeff Solomon does. Like I said, we all kind of have PTSD from Bob Murray days, so we're all expecting the worst here. But I think, based off what Solomon's done with the Kings and their commitment to a rebuild there and not jumping the gun just because they're playing well, I expect him to bring that to the Ducks organization here and not get he's too smart to get too far ahead of himself. So I'm not too worried about that. But appreciate everybody who did take part in that poll. It was a lot of fun. We'll talk a little bit more about that, I'm sure, on the weekly show that we're recording tomorrow morning. But stay tuned for that, because that's always a fun conversation. I think Pat's going to be on that show, so we got to get his takes on that as well. And last one I want to talk about is Isac Lundestrom, and I know Steven's going to be happy about this one, but Isac Lundestrom has slowly become one of my favorite utility pieces for the Ducks this season. He's really taken to the role that I think when he was drafted, we all expected he would eventually fill into at like the high end of his ceiling, where he would be a really good two-way forward, a penalty kill guy who can chip in offensively with some nice flair every now and then. And we saw that last night. I mean, his goal was a nice piece of individual skill. He catches the puck at the blue line. He uses some speed to get some separation on Sillinger, and then he makes a nice move to the backhand and slots it 5-hole on Merzlikins. Like, he has just become a really fun utility player for the Ducks. He's great on the penalty kill. Now, his underlying numbers at 5-on-5 aren't amazing, but he has been deployed heavily in the defensive zone for the Ducks. So it's really hard for those to look great when, the Isac Lundestrom, Silverberg, and I guess Grant line right now has strictly been used as a shutdown line. And even when, they had Henrique and a few other players with them, I think Sam Steele was there as well at some point on the left wing. They just have been used as a shutdown line, and heavily. I think about 65% of their draws have been in the defensive zone. So it really is a shutdown line for the Ducks. But Isac Lundestrom gets the least power play time of any Ducks forward, and he has 15 points in 28 games this year. And all but 2 of his points have been at 5-on-5. His 7 goals, 8 assists. 2 of those goals have been shorthanded goals, so he's got 13 points at 5-on-5, or at even strength at least. The only Ducks forwards who have more even strength points are Zegras, Milano, Getzlaf, and Terry. So, normally you wouldn't expect Isac Lundestrom to be in that conversation as a guy who could finish the season potentially with, 35 to 40 points, most of them at the even strength variety, with a few shorthanded goals and assists thrown into the mix. So he's just become a really nice utility player, very similar to, what Andrew Cogliano did for the Ducks when he was here. Virtually no power play time, but did his damage shorthanded and at 5-on-5, and was a nice secondary scoring piece for the Ducks. So Isac Lundestrom has really come along here. He's taken advantage of accepting that qualifying offer and will be in for a nice contract, I assume, at the end of this year, whereas Sam Steele, things really haven't worked out. But it was a battle between these two guys on who would take over the third-line center role, and I think everything that Isac Lundestrom brings, he just brings different assets to the game that the Ducks don't currently have at the center position. Ryan Getzlaf is a great two-way forward as well. Chips in a lot offensively this year. And Trevor Zegras, pure offense. Not that he's bad defensively, but you're not going to catch him on the penalty kill right now or taking any defensive zone draws. And I think Isac Lundestrom has really settled in with Silverberg to be a nice defensive duo for the Ducks for this year, which has been a lot of fun to watch. But I know Steven's a huge fan of him. I was when he was drafted, and the only worry I had about him was, would the offensive ceiling be there? Would he be able to produce at the NHL level? And I always love to be proved wrong, especially when it helps the Ducks out. And for Isac Lundestrom to be producing this way is a really nice, encouraging hit on a late first-round pick, where it is really dicey to see what type of player you're going to get from that spot. And when the Ducks get back to competing and being one of the best teams in the Western Conference, I think Isac Lundestrom is going to be a really key piece to that competing team and being a penalty killing threat a shorthanded threat and a nice contributor to the Ducks' top 9 at 5-on-5. So been a lot of fun to watch him this year, and hope he continues to play well, because I like the Ducks' future up the middle with Zegras, McTavish, and Isac Lundestrom. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode, last one of the week. We've got 2 games this weekend, Pittsburgh tomorrow and St. Louis on Sunday. Don't forget, if you are in the area, we do have a watch party for the game on Sunday against St. Louis. It'll be at Lamppost Pizza in Yorba Linda. Check our social media on either Instagram or Twitter for some more details on that, or just shoot us a message. You can comment on here or shoot us a message through Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram if you want some more details on that. We got a bunch of people coming out. It's going to be a lot of fun. I know the last ones that I was able to go to were always a good time to kind of get together with some fellow Ducks fans and watch the game. And hopefully it'll be a good end to the road trip. It's going to be 2 tough matchups heading into Pittsburgh and into St. Louis. St. Louis is going to get a few of their players back from injury, and Perron and Robert Thomas, so that should be a fun game to watch. But thanks for coming out today, guys, and we will see you back here on Monday morning.